Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Happy Tuesday, or maybe it's happy Wednesday where you are. You are watching USA Global TV, or perhaps you're listening on Business Talk Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is the Listening Mentor. And guess who that is? That's with me, moi. I am the listening mentor, and I'm thrilled to be here today. We run this show because I want people to know my team who has taken the time, invested in themselves to be an elevated listener. What does that mean? That means that they have taken courses to become educated and to get certified because they really care about inner peace as well as being part of our mission for world peace. If we can all listen more authentically, if we can be present for each other instead of multitasking, instead of listening with judgment, trying to come up with solutions, interrupting, and the worst, crosstalk, overtalk. We see it all the time. Here to discuss that with me today is a dear friend and someone who's extremely accomplished. Her name is Keegan Daly. She's a registered nurse, but wait, there's more and so much more. She's an educator. She's a counselor. She's a therapist. She's a Reiki healing master. She's the author of Reflections of a Seasoned Soul. And she's a certified dream builder life coach. And she's here today. Let's bring her out. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you. Thank you.
So nice to see you. My gosh, you're so busy. I can't even believe you have time to be here today. Thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm very delighted to be here. I think this is so important. Everything that you have to say is so resonant with me, and I just want to share whatever I can to help you in your mission to have everyone in the world become better listeners, myself included.
Well, thank you, Jean. I appreciate it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our show, you have taken the time to become certified and are now an ambassador for the listening, the power of listening, why it's so important. And Jean, what I want to share with you and everyone else is that we all have to continuously learn. I have to continuously learn. And we are in times that are very trying. People are still confused, lost, struggling, living in fear. I had somebody throw a rock at me figuratively yesterday because that person, I guess, is going through challenges. And so our goal is that, let's say, for example, we have a rock thrown at us, not to throw the rock back, but maybe to take a step back, right, and say to ourselves, something must be going on in that person's life. So maybe it's good that we remove ourselves from that person, or maybe we just take a time out. But I want to talk today with you about your background and how important listening is in all of these amazing accomplishments that you have achieved.
Thank you. I can really relate to what you're saying about your experience. I've been challenged recently with someone who has figuratively, or no, literally, not literally, figuratively, thrown a rock at me or two. And I have immediately decided that that person is facing their own challenges. So that's very helpful that you said that because that's true. When someone is judging you or criticizing you or accusing you, it's really important to step back, take a breath, and say, is any of this that they're saying to me truth inside of me? And if you can't really find an element of truth in what they're saying, know that they're facing a lot of challenges that maybe they didn't even know how to deal with, that they are projecting it onto you or to someone else. So it's important to listen to what is being said to you, and instead of jumping into being defensive right away, to step back, step away from that person or persons, and just know that usually anger is coming from a place of fear. Fear is usually underneath anger, and so is hurt underneath anger. As far as my career has gone, I've had to really develop being a good listener because in nursing, I started out as a regular nurse and I became a holistic nurse almost immediately because I believed in body, mind, spirit connection. And this was way back in the 60s when it really wasn't very well known and there was really hardly any support for that. But I always knew that if someone was hurting physically, their emotions and their mental outlook or their conditioning or their patterns of behavior, family, social, all of that impacted financial, all of that impacted on how they were dealing or not dealing with their illness. And then that moved into, me helping people. I was a hospice nurse for a long time, and really listening came into play all the time there because not only was I treating the patient, but also the family that was coping with this. Because in those days, there were just in home visits, there were no facilities. Hospice was very different then and very, very personal. So, listening to all of the stressors and listening to people in denial, people who were very fearful, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how people really react rather than respond in so many ways that they're actually not even aware of a lot of the time. And then, of course, as a counselor and therapist, I had to develop even more skills in just listening and trying to get to the theme. I always was trying to look for the theme in whatever people were dealing with. And there was always a common theme. And it could have been something like feeling unworthy, that they were feeling unworthy, stemming all the way back perhaps to childhood, or that they were feeling just uninspired and just felt like they weren't really worth much of anything to do anything. Many things like that. And of course, even in Reiki, when I'm working with Reiki energy healing with people, I'm listening intuitively to what I'm picking up from their body, from their experiences, just listening with my hands, not even touching the person, just over the person and seeing where they might be struggling in their physical body because it would be related to the other parts of them too, mind and emotion and spiritual.
Thank you so much, Jean. You have so much talent. And what I love about you the most is your heart. It just comes through in everything you say. It's your facial expression. You just are so compassionate. And I can see why you're so successful in everything that you've done and you continue to do because you're still out there. You're still out there in the world making a difference. So bravo to you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I can't even imagine myself completely retiring, as old as I am. I just there's just so much that I'm interested in helping people. That has always been um, my my wish to help in any way I can. And sometimes in the early days, I would want to help everybody, whether they wanted it or not.
That's a key learning, Jean, isn't it?
Yes, yes. I learned how to ask permission. I mean, I would be standing in line at a grocery store behind someone who was telling the cashier about a problem they had, and I would say, would you like some help with that? And they sometimes will look at me like, well, who are you?
Your intentions were good. You meant
Yeah.
well, but yet you were stepping out of your elements, and maybe the other person wasn't ready to receive it. So let's talk a little bit about what happens. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show about crosstalk, and then I mentioned someone threw a rock at me. if we are in a situation where everything's nice and peaceful, and then something comes up, we're going to be in a different frame of mind to deal with it as a listener than we are if we are already agitated, highly emotional, going from one stressful situation to another. So, as a nurse, you know all about that. As a therapist, you know all about that. So, let's talk a little bit about what happens when we're already not at peace because of something that happened during our day, something we're thinking about, something we're worrying about, something we're wishing for, and someone comes to us to share something and they don't ask for permission. So let's just set the stage. You just worked at school dealing with kids, people who are, children thinking they're ill or they need to go home. It's a pandemic, it's a mask, it's not a mask, whatever it is. And then you come into another situation where somebody just comes to you and just starts talking about their problems. How do you feel, Jean?
The first thing that I feel is in a situation like that, I can feel overwhelmed. Like, oh my goodness, how am I going to handle this? So I have learned that the most important thing for me to do is to take a breath. Just take a breath, which centers your being. So, and I ask for help from my spiritual guides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, help me here.
Smart.
And, like I'm asking to be divinely guided to speak to this person after I'm listening to what they're saying. Because a lot of times people don't want help, they don't want you to fix it, they just want to have you listen to them. And yet, there are times when they are talking so much about whatever is happening to them in a negative way. Just happened yesterday on we have something online called Neighborhood, and someone was talking about, why did God do this to me, and how come, I don't get any breaks in life. And I felt compassion immediately for this man. He had quite a story, yet I knew that, he really didn't have any idea of how he was compounding it over and over again by constantly focusing on that. And so I just wrote a short little um, idea for him if he was open to listening. That, to say out loud, even if he didn't believe it, that he was worthy, that he was, entitled to have happiness in his life, that there were ways to, be grateful for what he did have, and that would invite more things to come his way that he could be grateful for and that he was wishing for. So when when I come out of a situation, either with a day of clients who are really struggling, or children. I'm a part-time school nurse, not actually part-time, but substitute, and I'm being called often because of this pandemic, and the children are getting sick, and there's a lot to do. Sometimes I come home and I'm really exhausted, and there's a phone call waiting for me about someone who needs help. They need to vent, or they're angry about something that they misunderstood, or they don't know what to do. And so I've had to really discipline myself enough to take some breaths, make sure I'm centered, make sure I do whatever I can do to free myself of anything that might interfere with me being able to be present with that person and just listen, and leave my stuff out of it. And that might so I don't answer them immediately. I just wait
That's
until I can get settled in myself. I
that's
used to feel,
brilliant, Jean.
yeah, thank you. I used to feel guilty about that. I remember when I was very, very sick a long time ago, um, and I had just come home from the hospital, and I, and that was the time I had my near-death experience, which I wrote about in my book. Was very profound, and I was exhausted, and I had people calling me. In those days, it was the old-fashioned voicemail box, and people calling me, and I would feel so guilty that I didn't jump up and answer the phone. Oh, first of all, I couldn't even jump up, but just to get the phone right away because I wanted them to know that I appreciated their call. And yet, I had to learn how to take care of myself first. Like, okay, I need to be centered. I need to be present. I need to come across as really appreciative in my voice instead of coming across as, oh, I thank you so much, but I really can't talk very long now. Self care is so important. And it took me a long time to learn that because I felt like, I had to constantly put myself last. But then
That
you,
is a huge learning, and I want our audience to remember that. I've shared this before, and I'm going to say it again. My father, who's passed away, and I miss him every day, he used to say to me, just because someone's calling you on the phone right now, or because they left you a message, does not mean that you have to leap into action because they contacted you at a time that was convenient for them.
yes.
And I remember sitting at even as a young adult in my 20s, and sitting at the dinner table with my parents and knowing that some guy, I'm waiting for some guy. Oh, the guy's going to call, my boyfriend's going to call, right? If I missed that phone call, and my dad would say, you've got to toughen up a little bit. You can't be available all the time, every time somebody wants you, because you will be exhausted and you won't be good to anyone. So I always remember that. And today, what I am highly aware of, and I want to just chat with you about this, is I'm very much aware when someone reaches out to me, and I'm not judging, I'm just aware of whether or not they've asked me if this is a good time to speak with me. Because believe it or not, I have people reaching out to me all the times. Can you do a testimonial? Can you do a book? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm always yes, 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 yes. But at some time, I feel like I have to have a safety zone and a little bit of boundary for me. So I have to give myself that space. So when you do set a boundary, Jean, and you're able to take the old patterns of behavior with the guilt for not being able to be totally 100% in the greatest mood, addressing everything everybody wants. How do you feel today after you have accomplished this?
Oh, I feel so much better about myself. It's not to say that I'm, 100% at this, but I would say much, much more than I ever was before in my entire life. I've learned to set boundaries. And although I fail sometimes at doing that, or I just jump in and try to help before I'm settled, um, I immediately recognize that. And that's one of the things, the word that you said first was be aware. You were aware. And that's awareness is the first step in learning about yourself. I was on the telephone last night with someone for a long time, and I realized how much I was giving and giving and giving, explaining my philosophy of life. And this person was not really, they said they were interested, but they weren't all that interested. And I started to feel that, and I started to feel inside myself like I was exhausted.
Hmm.
So I stopped and I, just repatterned myself and said, well, I thank you for listening and I hope that this has been helpful to you, but I need to go now. I need to stop now. And, but, and then the other person said, well, what about, and I said, what about,
The white flag is waving.
so, yeah, I really have learned to do that. I got so sick when I had that near death experience and was hospitalized for 16 days because I just overstretched myself, just trying to help everybody. So, um, you know, and becoming in charge of my own feelings, being able to laugh at myself. I used to be so serious, and wanting to just please everybody. And now it's more of an awareness of myself. And am I really listening? And if I feel like I can't really be present with someone to really listen to them, I will say, I really, really would like to be there for you. However, this is not a good time for me, and I want to be fully here for you. And, sometimes they understand, sometimes they don't. Because, like you said before, they're in that moment of, I got to fix this, I got to fix this. So, yeah, it's all learning process. I think we learn until we die, and then still learn.
Learning, learning, learning. And Jean, it's such a good point that you brought up. When we come from a place of fear, of rejection, we are in an absolute state of panic. And we've got to talk to someone. We've got to do something because it's bottling up inside of us. So typically, what the pattern is, we reach out to someone and they answer the phone and we just go blah 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 blah. Right, just like, meanwhile they're in the middle of, I don't know, doing something really important, and we're calling up, just dumping everything that we have, and now we feel better. We just took 5 pounds off and gave you 10. Right, so I want our listeners and our viewers to remember that, especially during the holiday season. Remember that even though there's a lot to celebrate, there are still people who have had major losses, people right now who are in the hospital, people I know, people who have lost their business, people who have lost their will. So we have to remember that while there's so much to be grateful for, other people are really still struggling and trying to find their way. What does that mean? That means at social gatherings, it's possible that you're going to interact with someone who is trying to find their way. And maybe you're coming to an event, a family gathering, you're already worried about the mass or not the mass, or what they're serving, or who's playing football, or what time's the game on, whatever it is, and somebody else really needs to share something. So you're coming from two different places. So, Jean, as a therapist and as an elevated listener, let's just set the scene. It's a family get together. It's 3 or 4 generations of people coming from different parts of the country, we'll say, haven't seen each other for a while. Get together. They're coming to your home. I know that you've done a lot of entertaining, and everyone's in a different place. You now, in this role of elevated listener, you're able to see that people are over talking one another, yelling from one end of the room to the other. What advice can you give? You can't fix anyone, right? You're not going
That's
to
it.
go around and go, shut up. I want everyone to shut up. You're not going to be doing that. So what could you possibly, to protect yourself, what could you do?
Well, one of the things that I do to protect myself every day, no matter where I am or where I'm going, or people that, with, with people that I don't know or into a store or anything, is I put a shield of light around myself. And the shield of light that I have, that I utilize, is white and pink and gold. And that is a protective shield that I don't suck in anybody else's energy that belongs just to them, not to me. But also at the same time, I can be radiating out to people love and compassion and appreciation and attention. And so that's what I do for myself before anyone would come here, or I would go to anyone's house where there's a lot of people. And then if I hear people just over talking and no one's really listening, which certainly happens many, many times, with many, many groups of people, I and even sometimes with friends, when the friends are gathered, they're talking, they're over talking each other. Um, what I do, and this has worked, I usually just put up my hands, especially if I'm the hostess, and put up my hands and say, "Excuse me, everyone. Everybody here is so important." Something to this effect. Everybody here is so important, and we all have stories to share. We all have excitements and things, tales to share, that we really want to hear each other. We want to hear each other. So, how about if we just go around the room and take turns? Or I would say to people, you are so valuable, that what you're saying is so valuable that everybody wants to hear it. Now, this is when everyone is talking about, say, the same thing. When people are in different conversations and let's say there are four people together in a conversation and it starts to get heated because there's a lot of disagreement. All right. Um, I can gently remind people that it's okay to agree to disagree. That this is, that this is an occasion where we all want to have something to say. We all want to share our viewpoints or share happy things that have happened or sad things that have happened to us. And yet, well, I was working with a group of teenage girls one time who were mandated to be in a treatment home, and I was the nurse there. And I was also an educator for them about health and about communication and so on. And I used to do where they would all be talking at one time, and I would do this. Girls, just let's take a time out. Just take a time out. Take a breath. Now, it's more difficult to do that with adults because then some people might think you're telling them what to do. Yet, I feel that everybody needs to know that they're important, and everybody needs to know that they're valuable, and everybody needs to know that what they have to say can be listened to and heard, even if you disagree. And if it's something that you're being accused of, for example, like, I don't know, somebody's going to say, you don't know anything about that. But actually, they don't know if you know anything about that. Um, you can just kind of nod and say, when they finish a sentence, say, may I respond to that?
That's
You know,
great.
you're asking them permission. May I respond to that? I'm an Imago relationship therapist as well, certified, and we have done a lot of reflective listening. So a lot of times people will hear something that wasn't really said. They
Mhm.
put their own spin on it, So in Imago relationship therapy, when I'm working with couples or even parents and children, it's like, what did I say to them, just take 2 to 3 sentences because we're going to go on, we're going to continue, but 2 to 3 sentences and just let the other person, whoever it is, tell you what they heard you say. Uh, I can't tell you, Dr. Jacalyn, how many times people do not hear what was said. I'm just sitting, listening to this. I'm not making anybody right or wrong. I'm just saying to the person who sent it, is that what you said? And they'd say no. And I was in the same, when I was going through the training, I was in the same situation. It's like, that's not what I said at all.
Gene, they are such great gems that you are sharing today with our audience and with me. And something that I want to just really commend you on is your approach when you are the hostess and you have people over for what you said, make people feel important and make them feel welcome. And something that I do along those lines, I should say I did because I haven't been in a big social function for a while, but what I would do is many times you can find yourself in between two circles of people, right? You're sort of on the edge there, the periphery, and you're in this in conversation, but also in this one, you're really not in any. And
Yeah.
so what I have said is, I would say, excuse me, Jean, before you say something else, I hope you don't mind. May I? Go ahead. What you're saying is so important. And Bob, what you're saying is so important. Would it be possible for all of us to hear you one at a time? Because I'm sure Susan, Dave, you want to hear what she's saying and what, oh yeah, that would be great. And now there's one person speaking and it usually goes well. Sometimes you get somebody who's like, I don't care what so and so thinks. I'm just going to talk to him. And then maybe they walk away. But you can't control what other people are doing, but you can control how you respond. Something else that I shared, and I know you have some comments on this, is um, TV shows. Okay, we have a TV show here. I don't watch a lot of TV because I'm working all the time or critiquing my own work. But one of the shows that I really loved, my guilty pleasure, was The Real Housewives, two of the different segments. I'm not going to say which one. And what I found was it's sort of like a fantasy show for people watching, but it's actually their lives, right? But they talk over each other all the time. And I found myself getting a headache. And on one of the shows in New York, one of the the actresses basically said, I can't take this anymore. We need to have a coach because nobody's listening to anyone else. And so I thought, wow, even at that level, making that kind of money, knowing that you're on television and they're following everything that you're doing, you're still not listening, but one person was aware of it. So what have you found when you've been watching various television shows, Jean?
I have found the same thing. There was a talk show that I've tuned into a couple of times, and the women, that was The View, and the women were, well, Whoopi Goldberg is the head of this, and she usually, makes everybody settle down a little bit. But when they have like a guest co host on, that person, I've noticed lately, is trying to really say a lot, and she keeps talking. Somebody else jumps in, and then the third person jumps in, and it's like, yeah, stop. And the same thing I find with TV shows where the hostess or host is loved, beloved, and the audience is screaming, and the host is trying to start the show, and they're not stopping. I just want to say, sit down, be quiet. They're saying something important, like what the show is going to contain. So it's just something, and to approach this with kindness and with respectfulness is so important, because otherwise people are going to think you're trying to tell them what to do. Oh, you're
Yes.
not letting me talk. Oh, well, and that's why it's so important for everyone in the whole world to get these skills of listening well. And I keep learning and learning and learning. And also, that means that people will become more respectful. Because, in my opinion, respect is, and consideration is so, I should say, disrespect and inconsideration is so rampant.
Yes, totally agree with what you're saying. And by the way, I want to add to that because as a hostess myself, part of what it is setting expectations. So
Ah,
basically, what I will do when I have guests on, we have 18 to 20 shows a week. If I've never met the guests before, what I'll say to them is, I'm so happy you're here. I can't wait to support you in your work. The show is all about you. Please remember that this is not a monologue. This is an interaction. It's a conversation. It's not scripted, it's real, but the audience doesn't want to hear just from one person.
mhm,
It's back and forth. And I think that's the part that's missed, that in some people's minds, maybe they love the chaos because they live in chaos. But when you don't live in chaos, you can't stand that. I'm just speaking for myself. I can't stand people over talking one another and who's got the last word. And
mhm.
so I try to eliminate all of that from my life. Now, how do you do that if you're in an environment where you don't just live with you and another person, you have a whole group of people there? How do you get the solitude? How do you find a safe space for yourself? That might mean getting a set of headphones and listening to white noise or listening to some quiet music or physically locating yourself somewhere else in the house, in the dwelling, in the office, wherever, that you don't have to hear what's going on. What other tips do you have, Jean?
Well, I actually grew up in a family that was loud. There were six of us children, and I was the oldest. And I felt so many times growing up that I was not heard because everybody was talking at the same time. So, what I would recommend, first of all, I think your tips are wonderful, and I certainly agree with all of them. I think that people need to know, and this just goes back to my upbringing. I I needed to learn how to not feel guilty for taking time away from a situation that was, I mean, it didn't necessarily have to be uncomfortable. It was just too noisy. I'm very sensitive to a lot of chaotic noise going on. Um, so to remove yourself with also saying to the people, if you leave and where are you going? To say, I just need some some time away for a minute. I just need to collect my thoughts. You can say that. People would normally understand that. Um, if I say I'm going to meditate, they're like, "What?" we're, we're in the
let
middle
me
of.
let me join you. That's what I would say. Let me join you in the meditation, Jean.
I know. So, I think that the first person that you need to care for is yourself. It took me a long time to learn that, because when you fill up your well of care in your own being, and you are presenting yourself as calm, as respectful, as considerate, as understanding, as interested, then people will, that will show. It will show all over you, and people will get that eventually. So to get to that place and to maintain that place, you do need time away. I remember one time, one of my family members walked in my house and said, "Oh my gosh, it's so quiet in here. How can you stand it?" And I said, "I actually love it. If I want to, I don't have the TV on a lot. Um, I have music on, but only when I want it. When I want it, and it's music that makes me happy, or music that say I need to just really meditate or get very quiet and still, and accept an answer coming to me from my spiritual self, my soul self. Then it's beautiful meditation type music. Um, if I want to dance, I put on my favorite oldies and my doo wop and all the stuff I grew up with. Um, but time away to nurture myself is something that it took me many, many years to learn. And I hope that the audience can learn that much sooner, much earlier, that it's not being selfish, it's being caring for yourself so that uh, you have a ladle with which you can dip out from your own well-being to others to help them.
Jean, I am digging that comment. Say that again about the well dip.
Like, it's like I feel like there's a wellspring, okay, inside, and it's really our spiritual self. Now, this has nothing to do with religion. It's part of who we are. It's what we're connected with, our beingness. And when you fill that well with self nurturing, not in an egotistical way, but in a profound spiritual, I need to take care of myself way, you fill that up with what you need to become calm, respectful, appreciative, understanding, willing to listen, ready to listen. It's like it's filled up with this beautiful um, support, and I always see myself dipping a ladle in there and then just kind of pouring it over
It's beautiful.
mentally the person that I want to talk with.
That is beautiful. Let's give Jean a round of applause. Woo! And we've got a comment from Ann Dunn. Great content. Thank you so much, Ann. Thanks for watching. I look forward to connecting with you. I think it's tomorrow. I don't remember, but thank you for being here. Jean, we are at the end of the show, and I hate to end it because it's going so well with all this wonderful information you have to share. Before we give your contact information, I just want to let our audience know that they can be an elevated listener. You too can be part of our community, our team worldwide. We are out there helping people understand when you learn to listen authentically, you are helping promote your own inner peace, and also you are helping to create world peace. So how can you join this movement? Attend the Power of Listening seminars. Our next seminar is coming up January 5th, and we're actually combining parts 1 and 2 together. So it's 3 hours, and after which you'll get a quiz. And when you pass, not if, when you pass, the quiz, you will become a certified elevated listener. You get a certificate. You also get acknowledged. You get to come on the show, and there's so many more things. But the most important thing is that you really learn how to listen to your intuition, and other people know that you have a safe place for them to come and speak when you are available to listen to them completely. So please do go over to Eventbrite, just put in the power of listening. And in honor of my friend Madeline Chan, use the code Madeline, Madalene, for savings. All right. And Anne wants us to know that it's Jean. So it's Jean or Anne. I don't know. It's both Jean and Anne. Nice to have you, both of you here. So.
Hi, Ann.
Jean, what's the best way for people to reach you? We have all of your contact information here. Let me just pull it up again. This is actually who you are, and let's stream your contact information. You want people to contact you where, Jean?
At my email, which is J, the letter J, life, L-I-F-E, spirit, J, life, spirit, at Comcast.net.
Okay, Comcast.net. And please mention the listening show.
Well, the listening show is wonderful. I really support you in that, Dr. Jacalyn. It's been wonderful. I just love the little vignettes that you provide.
It's fun. We give out good, relevant information that's hopefully timely and people can take it to heart. And also we have a good time doing it. So thank you again, Jean, for being here. It's always a delight to see you. And by the way, when you become an elevated listener like Jean, you can book on our show starting in January. We're going to have the Listening Mentor 5 days a week. And part of it will also be that one of the shows during the week will be a game show where our elevated listeners will compete against each other. So we look forward to that as well. So thanks again, Jean, and thanks to everyone for watching or listening. We're going to close out the show with a beautiful clip from our friend Diane Floyd Bame, also an elevated listener and my co-host for 2 shows, The Corner Bookstore, Fashion, Fitness, Travel, and Leisure, and a brand new one. Woo! Stay tuned. All right, here we go. Thank you.
So much. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Kapayapaan, kapayapaan, kapayapaan.
Diane Floyd Bame's A Song of Peace tells the story of a young lad named Tommy whose fervent wish for peace on earth touches the hearts of his friends and family, spreads to his community, and eventually unites the whole world around making his dream of peace a reality for everyone. Sit down with the children in your life and share Tommy's amazing story of love and hope. Sing your own song of peace and invite the children to join you. Tommy's tale is more than just a story. It's a movement, and everyone's warmly welcome to take part.
Kapayapaan, 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 kapayapaan.
You'll find A Song of Peace, along with many other wonderful learning and enriching opportunities for children of all ages, at DianeFloydBame.com.